You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another review of sorts, but rather than a review of a series or something itself, it's a review of a character. Alright, post-editing Red-Eye here. I decided to count this as an episode of OverAnalyzing, because it qualifies just as much as any of my other character videos. Now, as you may have noticed on the channel, I recently played through the first 2 seasons of TellTale's The Walking Dead. I don't really have any interest in playing through the 3rd or 4th seasons, because I think that the first 2 are perfectly fine as they are. And the things I have seen from the 3rd season and 4th season, I have very mixed feelings at best, and negative feelings at most, so I really just think that I'm just not going to acknowledge 3 or 4. We'll see. Maybe my mind will change in the future, but I sincerely doubt it. Since this video will be a review of a character, there will actually be spoilers for Season 1 and 2, and it will be about the character of Kenny. Now, Kenny does not have a confirmed last name, but he does have a family in the first season. That family being his wife, Katya, and his son, Duck. Kenny's one of the first survivors you encounter, and he's the only one who's with you through both seasons. Kenny appears in every episode of Season 1, and all but the first episode of Season 2. You can actually see him in part of Season 3 in flashbacks, depending on the ending you got to Season 2, but those flashbacks kill him off, so I really don't like that. There are other ways he can be killed off, obviously, but we will get to that, don't you worry. But as you can see by the title, I think Kenny is the best TellTale character, as well as the best Walking Dead character. And I'm not just talking TellTale's Walking Dead. I honestly think he is both the best TellTale character and the best Walking Dead character in the entire franchises of each. A brief summary for those of you who aren't familiar with TellTale's The Walking Dead, although if you are watching this without that, I think the spoiler warning should have been sufficient at this point. TellTale's Walking Dead was the game that started it all with their choice-based system, and Kenny is a character whose relationship you build up with those choices. You either become very close to him or very distant from him. You either side with him or you're against him. Or you can be neutral. It really just depends on your choices with the character. I might actually do a full review of both seasons in a separate video, so we'll go into that a little bit more in another video perhaps. Right now we want to really focus on Kenny. Now, a lot of the fan base agrees with me that Kenny is the best character, but there are a lot that also really don't like him. Kenny's a very divisive character. There's people who absolutely despise him for some reason. I think most people don't like that he gets angry sometimes, and maybe that's a reason they get mad, but in all honesty, a lot of the things where they think, oh, he's just angry, he's perfectly justified in being angry. There are times when he does get reckless, and there are a couple of times he does chicken out in Season 1, but I honestly think people overplay that, because people often say that Kenny's kind of a coward, but you really only see that once or twice where he kind of books it when he doesn't want to step up and take a risk. But really, you only see that a few times. Most of the time, he's willing to take a risk, especially in Season 2, but definitely in Season 1 as well. There's only maybe 2 or 3 instances I can think of where he actually quote-unquote chickens out. Yeah, he can be reckless. Yeah, he can be in denial about things, like when his son gets bit, but we'll get into that a little later. And yeah, he's a flawed character, but those are the things that make him so interesting, and I think he's obviously the best leader of the groups in both seasons. Because something that I think a lot of people overlook is he has a very dominant presence. And when he first encounters the group in the pharmacy, the entire time, everyone is already acknowledging he's the leader with the exception of Lily and Larry. Literally everyone else already accepts him as the boss. Carly even says, "You got it, boss." Kenny is willing to make tough decisions, as you can see at the end of episode 2. When you're all trapped in a meat locker, and Larry may turn because he may be dead due to his heart attack. Kenny's the only one who's willing to step up and take him out, even if that means alienating himself from Lily even more, because obviously they had a tense relationship, because part of Season 1 is the two of them battling for leadership of the group. In Season 1, he is shown to be somewhat hot-headed, obviously, and stubborn. And the only thing Kenny really seems to care about is his family directly, which I think is admirable, because family is important, and in an apocalypse you have to take care of your own, everyone else be damned. I think that's true. Some people may not like that he prioritizes his own family above everyone else, but it's his fucking family, and it's all he has, so I really have never understood that criticism. And on that note, not only do a lot of people not like Kenny, like I said, it's pretty divided, but a lot of people also don't like his son, Duck, because they find him annoying, which I love Duck. I thought he was great. They also say he's pointless, which he's absolutely not. He's absolutely essential to the plot, especially in episode 3. The death of Duck is a huge moment in Kenny's character arc, because it's him at his lowest. Not only does he lose his son, but he loses his wife because she can't handle it and takes herself out. The idea of his son being bitten makes him completely lose it, to the point where he's in denial and simply wants to keep going with his infected son on the train, putting everyone else at risk. You have to talk him out of this, either through convincing him with words or by beating it out of him. The scene where you talk him out of it, I always found to be better, especially if you're a close friend with him, because then you can figure out that part of the reason he's in such denial is he feels guilt for not helping Herschel's son and for putting his own son above it, and he feels responsible for the death of Herschel's son back in episode 1. You have to convince him that it's not his fault, that he saved his own son, and there's nothing to regret about that, because there's no reason to feel guilty about saving your son when he was in danger as well.
You need to stop the train. Katja needs you, Kenny.
Duck will be fine.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't talk like that right now.
Go back there and tell my wife everything will be fine. What is the goddamn deal? He's a little sick, but we can't just quit. It's a scratch. He's not like the others. Jesus, all y'all are just making it worse.
This isn't about Duck.
The hell it's not. You think we're pals and you know me? You're some elitist prick with a fancy education who could pick me apart?
It's not like that.
The fuck it isn't.
You think you're the reason Duck was bitten? Like you had this coming or something? You didn't kill Herschel's son.
Yes, I did. And now it's catching up to me.
That's not what went down. You looked out for your kid. A bad thing happened to someone else's.
There ain't no way this world lets my son live when I help put someone else's in the ground.
That's not the way it works. You know that. Stop the train, man.
That's my favorite version of it, although I do also like the scene where you knock some sense into him. I think they're both very emotional scenes. Of course, as you go to find out, the character of Ben, who is new to your group, is indirectly responsible for the death of Kenny's family because he made a deal with the bandits who raided the compound, which resulted in Duck getting bitten, which ultimately led to both the death of Duck and Katja. Obviously, Kenny finding this out would be a horrible thing for Ben, but he eventually does, because Ben himself can't take the guilt anymore and tells him in episode 4.
No, wait. I want to know what he meant. What do you mean this is all your fault?
Kenny, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, man. Kid, this ain't the best time. Whatever you did, save it for later. I opened the door. I let them in.
Ben, we don't have time for this now.
I'm sorry, Lee. I can't do this anymore. He's got a right to know.
Know what?
It's been me all along, putting all of us in danger. Katja and Duck, it was all me. It was all me. Wait a minute. What are you saying? It was me who made the deal with the bandits at the motor inn, slipping them supplies. I thought maybe I could keep them off our backs. When it got discovered, that's when they attacked. That's when Duck...
At that point, there are two different ways the story can go, and both of which I think are really good, but I do think that the one where Ben survives is the better arc. Because if you save Ben in the tower, and then Ben comes with you, you then have to convince Kenny to forgive Ben. And the ultimate climax of this is at the end of Season 1, where Kenny sacrifices himself, albeit not permanently, because Season 2 brought him back, to save Ben. At the point that Season 1 actually ended, we were led to believe that Kenny absolutely died there, and Kenny had no reason to believe that he would survive that. Obviously, he didn't succeed in saving Ben, but the fact that he tried, and the fact that he forgave him, was a big moment for the character growing. We'll get on to Kenny's arc in Season 2 in a moment, but I want to talk about some of the lighter aspects about the character as well. So another note about Kenny that is a lot lighter is that he's just funny. There's a lot of funny moments with him. For instance, the lock-picking scene, where he implies that you'd be able to pick a lock because you're black, because he says you're, urban. There's also the scene where he insults his son by calling him dumb as a bag of hammers. And there's just a lot of really funny lines that Kenny has to say. Not to mention his hot-headedness and stubbornness can lead to comedic effect as well. But enough about that, let's move on to Season 2 and talk about Kenny's character arc, which is the most divisive arc of the character. I remember I saw a post on, I think, Reddit or something similar, where someone said that they brought back the worst character from Season 1, referring to Kenny, which I think was just a fucking retarded post. But that was the first time I realized that people didn't like Kenny. But another thing I saw was there was a video that someone did called We Don't Talk About Kenny that talked about his character arc in Season 2 and tried to say that it didn't fit with the character and that the circumstances were unrealistic for his motivations. He also tried to say that Kenny is like an abusive stepdad to Clementine, and I just completely disagree with that, especially the way I played Season 2. Because a lot of the points he made about Kenny, I think, are actually much more accurately applied to Jane, because Jane is constantly manipulating you for her entire time in Season 2, but we'll get to Jane a little more in a minute. So in Season 2, Kenny inexplicably survives. This is the one big flaw with the character writing that I have. We do not know how he escaped. He literally just says, I got lucky. Real lucky. That is the thing that I don't like, is there is literally no explanation. I do like the fan explanation that says he used his magical mustache powers to fly out of there, hence why I made a joke in reference to that when I completed Season 1. Another side note is in that video, the guy claimed that Kenny could steal the boat if you're horrible to him, but I'm 100% certain that the boat is always stolen by Vernon because it's an essential plot point. But again, he inexplicably survives Season 1, and you are reunited with him in Season 2, Episode 2. This is after you've been integrated into a new group who originally locked you in a shed with a dog bite on your arm, untreated, in the rain, which is really bad, just because they didn't believe you that it wasn't a zombie bite. They wouldn't even treat your arm before locking you in there. A pretty reasonable request, I think, but they didn't want to waste their medical supplies. This new group is initially pretty harsh to you, and for some reason some people side with them over Kenny. Not that it always becomes them versus Kenny. That really more so happens in Episode 4, when a lot of the new group has been killed and you're with members that are actually from another group that you sort of build after you're taken in by a villain named Carver, who, by the way, is a great villain and a great character. But the second episode of Season 2, when you reunite with Kenny, it's mostly catching up and being happy to see him again. Then at the end of Episode 2, you all get captured by Carver and taken to his settlement at the hardware store called House. Now, the House hardware store is a big settlement that has a bunch of stuff built around it and several little buildings and stuff that make it up. It's called the House hardware store, even though that's only one of the many buildings contained within it. It's led by a ruthless authoritarian named Carver, who, like I said, is a really interesting character, and himself makes some interesting points, given that it's a post-apocalyptic world. Kenny obviously wants to get out of there, and a lot of the new group just want to submit. This is another instance where Kenny is absolutely in the right. There are so many of his choices that I agree with him over the new group. When they want to be nice and stay level-headed, Kenny's anger is totally justified, wanting to not be put into slavery. It's ridiculous that everyone else just wants to sit and accept it, and Kenny's the only one willing to fight it. Of course, you ultimately do get put into slave labor by Carver, at least temporarily, because you will eventually escape, spoiler. But while you're with Carver, you see that Kenny is still being stubborn and doesn't want to be anybody's slave. Of course, a herd of zombies is approaching, and the threat is growing increasingly imminent, and it becomes clear that you need to escape. Luke, the leader of the new group, eventually shows up and makes a plan to get out of there by getting him a radio. But then you get back to the rest of the group, turns out they talk to him as well. Then Kenny and Clementine devise a plan to lure the herd away using sound from the outdoor speakers. You do a combination of both plans by using the walkie-talkie and the speakers in order to escape. Unfortunately, this doesn't completely work as Carver finds out about the walkie-talkies being stolen, and Kenny takes the fall for it, even if you were going to take responsibility yourself. Carver then beats the ever-living fuck out of Kenny with one of the walkie-talkies, completely destroying one of his eyes. This gives Kenny a cool eye patch, but also makes him very, very angry yet again. I should also mention that it's in Carver's compound where you first meet Jane. We'll get on to Jane a little more. Like I said, Jane pisses me off, and it pisses me off that people side with her over Kenny. I'm going to in my next playthrough just because I want it to be a very different playthrough, but I would never do it unironically. So after Carver beats the hell out of Kenny, Carlos, the doctor of the new group, patches him up as best as he can, although Kenny's eye is completely fucked. Kenny is still able to get enough strength to participate in the escape, and when you finally get encountered by Carver yet again, Kenny takes the opportunity to get his sweet revenge on Carver by bashing the fuck out of his face with a crowbar. And I don't understand how only 44% of players watch that. It's such a cool scene. What are you, fucking pussies? After Kenny gets his sweet revenge, you escape, but during the escape, Sarita, Kenny's new girlfriend, gets bitten by a walker. Now, you can cut off her arm to try and save her, which I did. But then, of course, she gets torn apart by a bunch of other walkers because she screams and draws their attention. This, of course, will later cause Kenny to get very, very mad, but the point is he actually gets mad at you regardless, because he'll get mad at you for cutting her arm off and indirectly causing her death because she gets swarmed, or he'll get mad at you for not cutting her arm off and not saving her. Either way, it's a lose-lose. And that is one of the few instances where Kenny is wrong with how mad he gets at you for it, but I understand why he did, because he just lost Sarita, his new girlfriend, after he had started over again. Because remember, he lost his wife and son. He lost all of his other friends because the entire original group is dead at this point, or gone, because we don't really know what happened to Krista. But it's literally just Kenny and Clementine now from the original group. His family's dead. He was starting a new family with Sarita, and now she's dead. So he does go off the deep end for a brief moment and falls into despair. And this, of course, is when Jane starts to manipulate you. She's been somewhat manipulating you the entire time to make you think that she's cool and that you need to go on your own to survive. She thinks that she's really special because she shows you to take out the knees of zombies before hitting them in the head, but it's like, I already knew that, like, this isn't anything special. A move which, by the way, you've already done at least once as Clementine, and possibly twice, depending on your choices. She thinks she's really fucking clever, and all of the tips and tricks she gives you are things that are really easy to learn that you already knew. The argument could be made that covering yourself in guts is something that she teaches everyone else, but you already knew that because Lee did it to you at the end of Season 1 to help you get through the herd. So really, her quote-unquote survival skills that she brings to the table don't really add anything particularly special. Basically, Jane's entire runtime, post-Kenny's breakdown, becomes trying to manipulate you into betraying and abandoning Kenny. Which is why I think it's ridiculous that that video tried to say that Kenny is manipulative, when Jane is abso-fucking-lutely way more manipulative, because she is constantly trying to get you to turn on Kenny when he's being completely normal and rational. Yes, he gets a little angry. Like I said, he just lost everything again. And so she says that he's unstable because he aggressively takes out some walkers, because he shuts down briefly, and because, he gets very angry. And post-editing Red Eye again, I put a caption there pointing this out, but like I said, I was incorrect in saying she says he's unreasonable, but it's actually Bonnie. The rest of the group kind of turns on him and acts like that's really weird and out of character, is what I meant. I think it is a little ridiculous that the entire rest of the group ends up turning on him, because Jane's dumbass threatens this Russian guy named Arvo, and you have the option to rob him, but even if you don't, he says that you robbed him, even though it would have been Jane then, because Jane's the one holding the gun on him and everything. But we'll get a little more to that later. The thing that snaps Kenny out of his downward spiral is the birth of AJ. The baby that Rebecca has been pregnant with for the entirety of season gives Kenny a new sense of purpose. He gets another chance to be a dad, to take care of a kid, to take care of a son, to make it right. And then, of course, he's taking you on as well. So he gets a chance to redeem himself as a father, where he feels he's failed before.
I miss my boy. I miss him so much. I didn't raise him like I should have. Made mistakes. Wasn't there a whole lot for a couple years. Off on a boat somewhere or other. I thought I enjoyed that time away from him. From my family. But I'd give anything for one more second with them. To play catch with Duck. To touch Katja's face.
I miss Duck too. He was a good friend. And I haven't had too many of them.
He was a good boy. Pure. Just wanted folks to be happy, that's all. A boy like that. Thrown into a world like this. It's gonna be different with him. He's gonna get raised right. I won't make the same mistakes again. That's a promise.
So, protecting AJ becomes his entire purpose in life after that point. When Arvo's group attacks, Jane does eventually come back, and the rest of the group decides to let Arvo live so he can take them to a house where he has supplies. Kenny is the only one who doesn't trust this kid, and everyone else becomes completely irrational by saying that Kenny's being too harsh on him with his anger. Kenny's anger is absolutely justified, because Arvo and his little bitch-ass group came and attacked you even if you don't rob him. Fuck them. Kenny is absolutely in the right, and I really wish you got a chance to fucking shoot Arvo in his goddamn face, because fuck Arvo. Kenny's harsh treatment of Arvo, including a beating and wanting to take him out pretty much given any excuse, leads to a rift in the group, where literally fucking everyone turns against Kenny, except for you if you choose not to. I think it's ridiculous that everyone turns on him. Admittedly, Jane is the one who doesn't fuck off and try to steal the truck like the others do. Bonnie and Mike can go fuck themselves for trying to steal your supplies and the truck and get out of there. Instead, they escape on foot because Arvo shoots you in the shoulder, knocking you out, and then you wake up in the truck with just Jane, Kenny, and AJ. In the PS3 version of the game, there actually was originally an option to shoot Mike, but they patched it out because they thought that Clementine shooting an unarmed man was somehow out of character. Which I think is really lame, because it would have been cool to be able to shoot Mike. Should have been shoot Arvo, but shoot Mike was at least a good second place. Along the way to get to Arvo's house that he has there, You do briefly get to talk with Kenny again, and he apologizes for his rash response to Sarita's death.
I'm sorry for how I acted back there. After Sarita was... I couldn't handle it. I'm sorry. I mean, you did what you could.
Which, again, is totally reasonable because, again, he lost everything again. But then he realizes he still has you and AJ, and that's all that matters now. As you're leaving in the truck with just Jane and Kenny, things spiral even further into a rift between the two of them, where ultimately you go to stop and try to find some fuel, get surrounded by walkers, get separated, and then regroup, only for Jane to show up claiming that AJ has died, and convinced Kenny that he's died, and the only rational explanation is that she killed him because Jane never wanted AJ there in the first place. She just wanted to kill the baby because she saw him as a liability. So when Kenny loses his shit and tries to kill her, succeeds, by the way, if you don't intervene, some people think that this is him going off the deep end when Jane has this coming. The bitch convinced us that she had killed a baby, and like it was just to make a point, to quote-unquote show us what Kenny really is. And somehow people still think that she's in the right. This becomes even worse when you find out she faked the whole thing just to get Kenny to explode. I remember my first playthrough, I accidentally shot Kenny because I pressed the wrong button, and then I found out Jane was lying to me, and I was even more mad at myself because I had just killed him over something that was completely caused by her because she was a lying bitch who wanted to push him over the edge just so she could prove a point, when he absolutely had a right to get mad thinking that she had killed a baby. But that said, another thing that just goes to show how amazing of a character Kenny is his final speech that he gives when you shoot him. I'm going to play that here now.
Clem, you made the right choice. I let you down. I let everyone down.
No, it's my fault.
No, you did what you had to. You don't ever have to apologize for that. We almost made it. We were close, weren't we? I thought I wanted this, asked for it so many times. Now that it's happening, I'm scared. I'm afraid, Clem.
It's okay, Kenny. You're going to see Katja and Doug. You're going to see them again.
Oh, you're always good for a smile.
Now, obviously, that's not my preferred ending, but I do love that scene. It makes me tear up every time I watch it. It just goes on to show how good of a guy Kenny is and where his priorities are and what's best for you. Another example we see of that is the ending where you don't shoot him, and he wants you to stay with the Wellington settlement without him because he feels that that's best with you and he can no longer trust himself to look after you. Once more, Kenny is such a great guy, and the only thing that matters to him is family. And through Season 2, Clementine and AJ become his family. And in my eyes, the ending where the three of them walk away together as a group of just them three, that to me is the true ending to TellTale's The Walking Dead. I know there were 2 more seasons and a spin-off, but I don't care for those because I don't like Kenny dying. Even though I do really like his death in Season 2. Again, his death in Season 2 when you shoot him is the best version of his death, provided you shoot him while he's trying to stab Jane. If you shoot him after the fact, I actually think it's a little anticlimactic because he says just do it and doesn't give you the big speech. But even in Season 3, which again I don't care to play, Kenny's death still shows how good his character is. In a car accident where he is thrown out and crippled, he makes the ultimate sacrifice so that Clementine and AJ can get away by screaming so that the walkers will come and eat him while they get away.
I don't feel anything.
That's good.
No, Clem, I don't feel anything. I can't feel my legs. I just can't get up. God damn it.
Oh my god, no, this isn't happening! This isn't happening!
Let me try again. Shit! Shit! Hey! Hey! Stay away from him! You gotta go help AJ, Clem. I ain't letting you watch those fuckers chew me up. Go, Clem! Now!
Okay. Okay, Kitty. Goodbye.
Good. Go. Now, goddammit! Hey, dipshits! Come and get it!
Again, only looking out for them. And his final act of redemption saving them. If you compare this to that bitch Jane, she kills herself and abandons you. Very different character. Way worse. Doesn't give a shit about you. I think that's great. I just don't like that he has to die in every version except for one. The only way you can keep him alive in Season 3 is if you listen to him and go into Wellington, and then at that point he goes off on his own and we don't know what happens to him. But every other variation he dies. Alright, so, why is Kenny the best Walking Dead character? Well, it's quite simple. Kenny is a family man. He looks out for his family. He's super based. He's objectivist when he needs to be. Him being willing to let that one girl get eaten by walkers allows you to get more supplies for your group to survive. You have no obligation to save this girl, and you wouldn't save her anyway, you're just gonna shoot her. She was gonna die either way. So, admittedly, it's a lot more ruthless, but it allows you to get more supplies so that your own group can survive. And in that kind of post-apocalyptic world, that's almost what you need to do in order to live. He's also, as I said, quite funny. He cares about his family, and again, that family extends to both Lee and Clementine, given the way that Seasons 1 and 2 play out, depending on your choices. And the fact that he's willing so hard to fight for his own people is really admirable. On top of that, seeing him get so broken and so tragic, and have such a good tragic ending, if you shoot him, I think is such a wonderful way that the character works. It's sad. His entire life is a sad story, because both Seasons 1 and 2 put him through the fucking ringer. And I think that that is another thing that really makes him such an interesting character. We get to see him get more and more broken and angry as the series goes on. And then with each season, he has his arc where he gets over it and is able to redeem himself. Through either saving Ben or Krista, and then for making his purpose protecting Clementine and AJ. He's a strong leader. He's willing to make tough decisions, like crushing Larry's head with a salt lick, which may to some seem like a harsh decision, but when you're locked in a confined meat locker with a guy that's huge, and he could turn at any moment, that probably was the right choice. And the way that Lily just kills either Doug or Carly is ridiculous. Like, Lily is obviously the bad guy in that situation, and granted, I know she's the villain in Season 4 as well. But Kenny is a well-written, admirable, and interesting character. And for that, I say he is the best character in TellTale's The Walking Dead, in TellTale in general, and in The Walking Dead in general. Now, that said, there are some flaws with him, obviously. He is pretty stubborn, and he will get angry at you in Season 1 particularly if you don't agree with him all the time. That said, he will still ultimately reconcile and appreciate the things you do for him and his family regardless. He just sometimes gets a little bitchy. But that's part of the character, and that's part of why I love him. This has been Fugitive Red Eye, and I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one. Toodles!
Hey, man, let's go home.
Fuck it. We've come this far.